So I'm back and we're going to be starting some more seeds, and this is my setup so far. This is the grow shelf that I have, and I wanted to show you what I'm using to give you ideas of what you could use. This is a lot more than what you would need for just a basic garden, but this is what I've found that I'm going to start trying to start seeds in. So I have a bunch of these just little punnets that I'm going to start one type of plant in, so like one species of tomato, so I know what I have in each one, and it's going to sit in this tray which actually has holes in the bottom, which will then sit into a solid flat bottom tray, so that then I can have this one sitting in here and actually can pour water into the bottom of here, and the seedlings can get watered from the bottom. It's much better for seedlings to get water from the bottom because you can get diseases and fungal infections and things like that when you water from the top if it gets too damp in the foliage. So that's why I've gone with this sort of setup. And I've also got on these shelves here, I've got 2 heat mats across the bottom here. So they go underneath the trays like this, and they help to keep the soil nice and warm because I'm just starting seeds here in my garage, and you want the seeds to be at different temperatures to help germination. I've actually got some neat little thermometers here that will help me to monitor their temperature. And just a handy thing on the back of these propagating thermometers, it actually has the different temperature that you need for seed germination. You don't need to have this thermometer though, you can just Google it and find out what you need for your different plants that you're wanting to start, to find out what temperature they need to have so that they're happy to germinate. And above these seed trays here, I've got some light here because most seeds need light to germinate and to grow. So there's just 2 little light bars under here, and you can see at the moment they're quite low to the trays, but as the seedlings grow up, I can actually move these lights up because they're just hooked on with a chain that we can move up and down as we need to. So I'm going to start some tomato seeds today. So this is my own seed starting mix that I made from a couple of different ingredients. So in here I have 2 parts mushroom compost to 2 parts cocoa coir and 1 part perlite. So the perlite is like a volcanic rock, and it just helps to aerate the mix. The cocoa coir has really good moisture retention, and the compost actually has some nutrients that helps the seedlings as they grow. And so I've mixed it all up in here, and I've actually pre-moistened it so that the seeds, when they have contact with the mix, they've already got some moisture that they can draw up. And then when I water them in the bottom of these trays, they've already sort of got a bit of a head start, and it also helps the seeds to have good contact with the soil, which is what they need so that they can draw up that moisture and the nutrients as they start to grow. So I'm going to start filling up my little punnets with this mixture first, just not all the way to the top, and then I'm going to start putting the seeds on top of that, and then I'll cover it with a little bit of more soil on top of that. And I'm just going to be starting some different kinds of tomato seedlings today. So when you plant any seed, it needs to be twice as deep in the soil as it is wide. So tomato seeds aren't very big, but they do need to have a little bit of soil on top of them. They're not as big as like a pea seed, but they're also bigger than like a carrot seed that you really wouldn't need to sow very deep at all. So I'm going to be pressing this in fairly firm. Into the little punnet there. Because you want it to be nice and packed in firm so that later when you transplant, it's not all crumbly. You've got a nice tight little seedling with its roots all packed together. So I'm just going to pop my pre-prepared one in the tray here and do the same with the rest. In some of these mixtures you will get some bigger items. If you come across any of those, just set them aside. You can pop them into your compost or just back into the garden. But you don't really want a lot of big objects in your seed raising mix. It's just too much for the seeds and plants to grow around. So you want a smaller sort of mix. The other thing you want to make sure that you do is that you label the seeds that you plant so you know which ones you're actually getting when they come up. And I'm planting 8 different kinds of tomatoes today. So I've labeled just using puddle pop sticks, and I'm using just a pencil. So on one side, I just put the type. This is a Siberian tomato. And on the other side, I will just put the date that I've sown it so that I know how far along it is, just to keep a track on it for me. And so when I sow the seeds in the punnet, I usually make sure I sow them first and then pop my little stick in after I've sowed it, because that's just sort of my way of tracking which ones I've actually already sown, because once these are done, they will be covered with soil again. So I'm going to get seeds now for each one and do it one at a time, just so I don't get myself mixed up. And so a couple of seeds in each one and cover it with soil and then pop my little marker in. So here I've got Brandywine pink tomato. So I'm going to open that one up. That's the seeds there. They're pretty small. So I'm going to pop them into one of these punnets, not all of them, maybe about 8 in each, just to make sure I have enough germinate, and I'll put a few of each kind in the garden. I won't put this many in, that's just to show you. So I'll probably put about 8 in each punnet and then cover it up with some more soil. Because this pack is open a little bit now, you can just put some tape over that, but I just put them into mini clip lock baggies just to keep them fresh and make sure they don't get any moisture on them. These ones here, that was the Brandywine pink, so I'm just going to put my label in now and then cover over those seeds there with a little bit of soil and just press that down a little bit like that. There we go. Just like that. Got another one. This is Waspinaken Peach. Put my little marker in. My Siberian. Let's cover up this last one. Make sure all the seeds are lightly covered. There we go. It's all done now. So I've actually got 10 varieties there. I thought I only had 8. So I've got orange cherry, tomato tigerella, Dr. Witch's yellow, a yellow oxheart, tomato ponderosa pink, triple crop, Cherokee purple, Siberian tomato, Whisper Pemmican, I don't know if I'm saying that right, peach, and Brandywine pink. So now that they're all sewn and I've lightly covered them with potting mix, I'm going to move them onto the grow shelf. So I've just slid them in here on this shelf here. Keep forgetting that the labels sometimes get in the way of the light, so you got to be careful about that. I think last time I used the shelf, I actually cut these paddle pop sticks in half just so it wasn't sticking up so much. So now that that one is on the shelf, it's on a heat mat there, which I'm going to turn on, and I'll have that on through the night. I'll turn the lights on, and we do have a timer, so I can put that on to set for I mostly at least want it on for the nights because they're a fair bit cooler here in our garage, so I just want to give them enough warmth to germinate. So here they are. This is what it looks like now that they're all set up and ready. And usually what I do is I just pop in one of these thermometers, it's got Celsius and Fahrenheit, into some of the soil, just so I can keep an eye on the temperature to see if it's getting too hot, or more importantly, I just want to make sure it's not getting too cold in here. So now they're all ready to go. And we have tomatoes popping up. They've been coming up over the last couple of days. There's still a couple of varieties that haven't come up, but out of the 10 different kinds, I think 4 are left to come up. So you can see here, these ones are looking the oldest and the strongest. They're yellow oxheart. They were the first variety to come up. And so just waiting for the rest of them. And so the heat mat is nice and warm. I just have it going for about 16 hours through the night because it's a bit chilly here in the garage. And the lights are on the same timer. I've got them set up here. So the lights and the heat mats are on a timer to keep the soil warm, and also once your seedlings pop up out of the soil, you want light so that they don't get all leggy trying to reach up for a source of light, and that's why they're quite low down there for all of the little seedlings. I also brought my fan in here, and I have hooked it up to the same timer. I just turned it off for a second now while I'm videoing, but just because there's no breeze in here, seedlings can struggle or be a little bit weak if they're not getting like the normal breeze that they would if they were out in the natural habitat or just out outside in the garden. And so sometimes you can just rub your fingers over it, or just a slight breeze by the fan can help as well, just to help them have a good head start.